Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 17th of August, comes to you from London. And we start, as always, by looking at the dollar index. Dollar regaining some strength, falling back yesterday on political woes in the US, but interestingly, the dollar is finding its strength again. So we are actually bullish above the cloud, with upside targets of about 2%. Looks like we're putting in a little bit of a bottom here. We are still bearish in the medium and long term charts, but short term the dollar is looking more bullish and bouncing off this support level. And that's filtering through to euro weakness. We're seeing here the euro below the cloud short term, another new target not yet activated to 114. So we are just seeing the euro falling back a little bit here, and again, it's looking a little bit like a top. So bullish in the medium and long term, but bearish short term. Japanese yen, the dollar is just finding support here above the cloud as well on the short term chart. So a bit of a mixed picture on all the time frames, but actually the dollar is just finding some strength there too. And sterling is falling against the dollar, so that's another impact of the dollar strength. Got a new downside target to 125.40, and we're seeing this other target of 124.30 actually activated. So we are just seeing more downward pressure on sterling. Of course, sterling has been testing last year's lows on the euro, but we are just again this morning just recovering a little bit. The euro is the weaker pair, and we're looking at the Swiss franc here. We see sterling below as well. Against the Australian dollar, sterling making new lows and bearish on all three charts, and this is really a function of Australian dollar strength, which is strengthening against the US dollar at the moment as well. The S&P 500 index just recovering a little bit yesterday, so just holding on to these levels. Nasdaq also just sitting pretty steady, and the Dow Jones holding its own as well. The Russell 2000 continues to look bearish below the cloud on the short-term chart, but looks like we might be finding some support medium term. The S&P future down very slightly this morning. The Nasdaq E-mini future down 0.25%, so it looks like we will open lower today. FTSE 100 index just struggling to get back above the cloud on the short-term chart, so we are just seeing some downward pressure there as well. And the FTSE 250 much the same, still looking bullish medium long-term, but short-term bearish. The DAX actually just recovering a little bit on that weaker euro, but this is the most worrying chart that we're actually below on the medium-term target. So the German market not looking as good, and that's much the same picture for the Nikkei. We are still bullish on the medium and long term chart, but short term we are just falling away there. Hang Seng is recovering its pose a little bit, still just bearish but coming through the cloud, and the Shanghai market also just ticking up into the into positive territory. And most of all, this long-term chart just starting to look a little bit better. The Sensex, the Indian market, is actually still below the cloud short term, and the Australian market is actually above the cloud but very much in the doldrums the last few months. Brent Crude is nudging this $50 level this morning. We're bearish below the cloud, and of course $50 will be a psychologically important level for Brent, and we are just seeing that we are moving lower there. And of course WTI is testing new lows already, so it wouldn't be surprising to see Brent falling on that as well. At 46.66 at the moment, looks like we're heading into the low 40s with targets of about 3 and 4% downside. US nat gas falling back into bearish trend on the short term. And copper, having jumped yesterday, is just holding those gains and looking bullish on all three charts, so that's pretty good news. Taking a look at gold, gold had a very big move overnight based on these Trump comments and political uncertainty in the US, and we are just seeing gold now pretty much bullish on all three time frames. This upside target, of course, at 1367. If we can spend an hour above that 1290 level for gold, we will activate that upside target, and gold will be going much higher. Looking at silver, we see here we're bullish above the cloud on all three time frames as well now, so silver looking pretty good as well. Similarly, we have an upside target as well. So you can see here on silver we're just bullish there. Taking a look at the euro, we see here, the euro bund, we see the bund is actually looking just a little bit bearish in the short term. That's the actual price of the bund. When we look at trend year treasury yields, we see here we are just in bullish territory, although we still have a lot of downside targets hanging over us. Apple actually managed to hold pretty steady last night. We've got good upside targets here of 2 and 10% on the short-term charts. Google is actually looking a little bit better. We've got these downside targets hanging over us, but we are just starting to come through the cloud. And Amazon also just starting to wander through that cloud as well, so looking a little bit better there too. Facebook holding its own, fairly flat the last week or so around this 170 level, but is still looking very bullish with lots of upside targets. And Microsoft also looking bullish as well, now back above the cloud and bullish on all 3 time frames. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.